Tonight, both for the students here in the Bible class and those that will be watching this via Facebook Live. And it's the first class in our study tonight called the Intertestament Period. It goes by a number of names. Sometimes it's the intertestamental period, between the testaments, between Malachi and Matthew, whatever you name it, that's what we're going to be dealing with. A workbook that we'll be using and that is readily available is this workbook by Mike Willis called the Intertestament Period. There are 13 chapters in that, and if all goes well, we'll do a chapter a week. If there's lots of questions and interest and things that people want to cover, we may expand that a little bit more. The book titles that are just on the market suggest what an important period of time this actually is. That is the lost 500 years, as one put it. So that would be, here's the Persian period plus the Maccabees. Another one just called it the intertestamental period, so between the Old and New Testament. Another one, the 400 years of silence from Malachi to Matthew. Another one, the bridge between the testaments, a reappraisal of Judaism from the exile to the birth of Christianity. A couple more. The 4 centuries between the testaments, the background of the gospel, Judaism in the period between the Old and New Testament. Because what all this is going to do, it is really going to enrich your understanding of the New Testament. Wait, why is that this way? Well, because it had this foundation to it. So I thought you'd like to know what to expect from this study. And there's a handful of things I'd like you to get out of it. One of them is that there are exciting new insights to the Bible and Bible prophecy. Generally, people come up to Daniel, wow, and the 3 Hebrew boys and the lion's den and all this, to get to chapter 11. Well, we're done with that. But Daniel 11 deals with this period. It's a biblical period from the standpoint of prophecy. And I like thinking of it as the crucible in which Christianity was born, because they were born in these circumstances. Galatians 4 and verse 4, how here was Jesus, born of a woman, born under the law, and born in the fullness of time. At that right period when God said everything is just right, and you're going to see everything was just right with absolute total pandemonium, craziness in the world. Because as you study this tremendous subject of the Intertestament period, you're going to witness adventure. There'll be battles, betrayals, honor, intrigue, strength, murder, loyalty, courage. You have it all. I mean, daytime drama has nothing compared to what goes on. And you will be startled. You'll be thinking, wow. And you go, well, that's what Solomon said. That which is crooked cannot be straightened, and that which is lacking cannot be counted. They were just as crazy as our world is today, and it was back then. Here's a big deal. All dates are approximate. Particularly, any author, and this one, Mike Willis, did a lovely job with his booklet, The Intertestament Period. And for those that are not here, you can order it from Guardian of Truth, 1-855-492-6657. But the point I want to make on that is you are free to disagree with virtually anything he says. Why? He's just a guy, he's a Christian, and his dates will be, say, wait a minute, I don't like his dates. I think he's a year off, too late, too early. That's okay. Because almost every author does that. And they say, well, why don't they just say BC 1721 at 2 in the afternoon? Well, of course, they didn't have our little calendar with little squares on them, says October. And what they would do is say, from the coronation of King so-and-so until Valentine's Day, and he broke his leg, and then there was the flood. Remember the flood in which Hezekiah perished. So the historians try to go back and say, okay, 1 year for this and 1 year for that, and we get this all together, and they try to figure out, is it this year or that year? So here's how I'm going to do with it. I'll tell you the dates that seem reasonable to me. If you like a date a year or two earlier or later, I don't care. If it freaks you out that he says, it doesn't matter. One of the things you can do, you can always write an author of a book and say, sir, could I ask you about, on page 47, you said, but I have a problem with it because, and I had the opportunity to do that for an individual that wrote the narrated Bible, F. LaGard Smith. I felt pretty confident in doing it. I went to school with him, but he is way smarter than I am. But there was a portion when he got to, and I wrote to him, and I said, LaGard, when you get there, you said da-da, but really the evidence, I think, better supports X, Y, Z. And he was great. He said, I'll think about that. There is that the way, and maybe the next edition I'll mull that over. So you have that opportunity. And what we're going to do tonight is I'll give you more than is in the book. So if you say, well, I'll just stay home and read the book, that's good. But you'll get more. Besides, it'll be more fun being together. What I want to ask you is do your homework each week. It really will be rewarding. I don't care if it's in academics or athletics or social relationships. You get out what you put into it. If you say, hey, I'm just going to hang out in class, that's kind of easy and cool. Well, it is, but you'll only take away what effort you have put into it as well. And so expect to work hard. Occasional quizzes, nothing blistering and bewildering, and have fun, because you'll learn better when you're doing that. All right, let's talk about the intertestamental timeline. It's sometimes called, the silent years. Well, it was anything but. It's absolutely jammed with activity and craziness, but it means silence as far as what? Right. Yeah, as far as prophets and prophecy operating in that period. They prophesied about it, fulfilled the prophecy during it, but there weren't a bunch of literary, written prophets and verbal prophets in that time. So that's why they mean silent. There just weren't prophets operating. You're going to have from Genesis to Malachi, everybody knows that, and we have from Matthew to Revelation. Yeah, but what else? Well, there's this little sliver of time, about 400 or 420 years, between Malachi and Matthew. And that's what we're going to look at in the course of this study. Daniel 11 prophesied of this period. Usually it's ignored by people. And the New Testament comes after it. And so here's the 420 years. It's recorded by, prophesied about by Daniel, commented on after the fact by Josephus, and the book of 1st and 2nd Maccabees. So there's a lot of information about it. And the last part of introductory material as far as the book is the kind of things we'll cover. This first class will be kind of a broad overview. We're covering a ton. Lesson 2 is way, in my opinion, way easier than chapter 1 because we're covering everything. We're covering everything from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and down into Egypt, and back into Israel, and Judges, and United Kingdom, divided kingdom, and the Syrian captivity, and Babylonian captivity, and then their return. So there's a ton of information there, 1,000 years. And then next week it'll be the Babylonian period, then the Persian period where they're released, Greek invasion, so here's Alexander, and then the Ptolemean Seleucid rulers and how that persecution impacted the Jews. And the Maccabean rebellion, what the Jews do about that persecution. Then the Hasmonean, the Jewish family name, Maccabean or Maccabee, is simply a nickname. The family name came from an ancestor, and so hence the Hasmonean. Then we'll find out how the Romans came to get involved in that. And then issues, if you just turn over to Matthew, boom, there's a synagogue. Well, how did that come about? We'll talk about that in Lesson 9, Lesson 10, the Samaritans. In fact, we'll touch on them tonight a little bit. And then you have all these multitude of Jewish sects. We see, in fact, they have them, their descendants today, and it's just almost bewildering. And then a final and fascinating thing, what about all the literature that was written in that period? Yeah, it's fascinating, it's just not biblical. Well, why not put it in the Bible? Well, same reason why you don't put Josephus in the Bible. He wasn't a prophet, he's just a guy writing some history. All right, let's break from that and get started this evening. We begin, at least from the standpoint of this study, with the flood. I thought of it as God cleaning house. In Genesis 6:5, the one you know about, the thoughts of men's heart was only evil continuing. I tell you what, I look at the news tonight, and I did, and I thought, the thoughts and intentions of man's heart, only evil continuing. And so you're familiar how God destroyed the world and saved Noah and his family. So then you move ahead to Babel. And what did the Tower of Babel show? Well, people don't change. You're starting all over, and it's the same kind of folks. And so in Genesis chapter 11, God says, spread out. And I said, yeah, I think we'll all stay together. And so they did. Well, as we then move to Abraham, the call of Abraham here is given about 2150 BC. It's found in Genesis 11. He's called. Now, the first question that comes up, and my question to you, why, and this is one of Willis's questions, why was Abraham called at all? He was doing fine where he was. And the answer is?
New beginning.
That's right. Humanity hadn't been doing so well, and so God is starting with a new beginning. And according to Genesis 15 and Acts 7, from what city did he start in the call? Yeah, Ur of the Chaldees. He didn't start in Babylon, that was a little bit further upstream. And so he was called from Ur. Then there's three great promises to Abraham. We got Abraham, he's called. He goes from Ur, by the way, to where? Where's his next, I'll say, camping ground, or where he settled for a while? Yeah, starts and out from Ur, settles in Haran. Anyhow, he's given in the course of time three great promises. I don't care what order he gives me in. One promise is the land promise. You're going to get the land that I show you, wherever your foot falls, you're going to get. So the land promise. Another one is? A little louder?
Make a great nation.
Yeah, you're going to have a land, and you personally, you and your descendants will end up being a tremendous nation. How many in his family? His immediate family? Well, there's Abraham and his wife Sarah. So, you're going to be tremendous. Think of this, 75 years old. You're going to have millions of, you can't begin to visualize. So there's the land promise, the nation promise, and what's the third one? The seed promise. And so you got promise 1, 2, and 3. And the nation promise said, here's the deal. You are going to have so many descendants. You're going to fill the earth. And he's thinking, good. How in the world is that going to work out? And that's Genesis 12 and verse 2. He's given that land promise that we've talked about. Wherever your feet goes, you're going to be given that land. Genesis 12 and verse 7. And then the seed promise. Through one of your descendants, all the nations of the earth will be blessed. Think the magnitude of that. Well, the nation promise was fulfilled. As they come out of the land of Egypt, there were how many? We're just talking about men, warriors, between 20 and 50. How many? Yeah, that's kind of a cool number, isn't it? 603,550. Remember it, because it's cool. You may be asked that on a game show sometime and win $10 million. And so he became a great nation. Acts 2 and verse 5, on the day of Pentecost, here were Jews from every nation, under heaven. So they're all over the place. And then the land promise, that's what Joshua says, that God has fulfilled the promise that he gave to our fathers. And So he's given us the land. And then the seed promise is fulfilled in Jesus Christ and cited first by the Apostle Paul, Galatians 3:16. Now, having said that, what do I want you to remember? I want you to remember there are three promises. I don't care the order. I want you to remember it's in Genesis 12. I don't care the verse. When Moses wrote it down, there weren't any verses there anyhow. So you get Genesis 12, and that's close enough for me. That was question 2 and 3. But in question 2, in the second part, talked about the patriarchs. The first 3 great patriarchs under consideration here are
Saul, David, and Solomon.
those are great kings. Now, who's the patriarch? Okay, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There we go. And so, of course, Abraham married to Sarah, Isaac married to Rebekah, and Jacob is blessed with 2 of them, Leah and Rachel, although he only wanted 1. So it was a Walmart special. You got a little more than you had bargained for, but go for it. And so there's the 3 patriarchs. And then we're going to find out how they went into slavery in Egypt and then returned. Jacob's family traveled from Israel into Egypt. I want to know why? Yeah, well, there's good reason. There was a famine. We're running out of food. Genesis 41 and Genesis 43. And so they went down into Egypt. When they went down into Egypt, how many Jews went into Egypt? So here's Jacob and family. Total of 70. So under 100. They get down in there, and then come a time where God's ready for them to come out. And this is kind of backtracking to an answer that was given regarding the warriors a little bit ago. How many Jews, that is, how many warriors came out of Egypt? 603,550. Now, if you got that many 20, 30, 40, 50-year-olds, guess what? Then you got that many women and children and probably more. So you got 1.5 million people are coming out of the land of Egypt. And so you'll find that number cited for us in Numbers 146, Exodus 38 to 26. Okay. So that got Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, got them down into Israel, got them back out of Israel, and that's important. So I'm not interested in remembering all the scriptures, but having just those little pair of numbers is good. 71 in, 603,550 plus came out. All right, let's talk about the Exodus itself. Israel was in Egypt 400 and specifically 430 years when they got down there. I don't know that this is in the book, but why did they need to stay in the land 400 years? And Chuck, the reason is?
The iniquity of the Canaanites was fulfilled.
Yes, the iniquity of the Amorites. So we're going to give you the land, and they are rotten. But they've got to be more rotten, and when it is, it's fair that they are dispossessed. We have on our kitchen counter some bananas. Wonder how long have those bananas been on our kitchen counter? Not long. Week, maybe. Weeks, I'm not sure. But they have this beautiful freckled and brown look. They're maturing. And, well, I tell you what, they stay out there much longer. Either they're going to be made into a smoothie, or the iniquity of the bananas need to be cast out. And so that's what it was with these Amorites. And so while they are in Egypt, a Pharaoh arose that did not know Joseph. And according to Exodus 1:8 and following, why did the Egyptians at that time keep the Jews or put the Jews in slavery? Yeah, they were afraid of them. But wait a minute, if we got a problem with an enemy, these guys really aren't Egyptians. What if they line up? And so we better, I'll say, persecute them. And so question 7, Exodus 12, why they're about to come out. Why the Passover? Yeah, here is is going to be the death of the firstborn, and if you put the blood of the lamb on the doorpost and lintel, the destroyer will pass over. Exodus 12, 7 through 14. The sea parted, we know that. Exodus 14, 15 through 19. How did it come to part? What, you can say, what made it part? I mean, you say God, I know, but how did God say, this is what you're going to do? You go a little louder?
Talk to Abraham and told him what to do.
No, I mean from Moses' standpoint. Moses got to get him through there and said, Moses, here's what you do to get the waters to part. That's right, here is the rod. And so, and you have 430 years that they were in Egypt before they come out. Now, it gives us a feeling of the Mayflower and the Pilgrims arrived at Plymouth Rock and founded a colony in 1620, 400 years ago. You say, well, that's just like yesterday. No, we all know, man, that seems like forever. And they have some of the cities that, getting a feeling of the antiquity of them, St. Augustine in northeast Florida was founded in 1565 by the Spanish, 554 years ago. Jamestown in Virginia in 1607 by the English, 412 years ago. So how much kin do you feel with those Pilgrims and the Jamestown people? It's kind of, oh man, they were forever. And so that you have the sense of the passage of time in that situation. I just put this up for fun. So here's the wilderness wandering. So here's a signboard, and you are here, and all these curling cubes going all directions. Did Israel know where Palestine was? The answer is, well, they got God leading them. It wasn't like we got lost and we didn't know where to go. Except that God told them where to go. And here's what I want you to do. You're going to cross the Red Sea. Get down the Red Sea. At Sinai, you're going to get what? The Ten Commandments, right? Go up there, get them. And here's the golden calf and all that controversy and battle at Rephidim and there's no water, we haven't got enough food and all the complaining and all that kind of stuff. And so finally they get on up to Kadesh Barnea. God says, you're ready, go on in. And Israel says, I don't think, oh man, them guys are giants, I can't do it. And, oh, we better turn back to Egypt. God says, all right, you don't want to go in, you're not going to go in. And I can understand that. So how long will Israel stay in this quadrant of Sinai? The answer is, you get to stay there 40 years. Why 40 years? Because, Mary?
To take out that generation, those people that didn't trust God.
Yes. And there was a numerical balance. What was the line of coefficient? Why 40? God said, it's going to be 40 because?
Nobody would be alive.
Well, that's true. But what I'm looking for in Numbers 14:34, 1 year for every day that you went into the land. And you spied out, you could have come back and like Joshua and Caleb said, let's go make it happen. And you said, no, I don't think so. But you know, before we just pass off from that, we might think of things, some lessons we can learn in looking toward the promised land. That is, God meets us where we are. In slavery, in oppression, in hopelessness. And he says, there's a better land. 2, the way to the promised land is not always easy, but it's always worth it. 3, God will make a way where there doesn't seem to be a way. 4, God will lead us by day and by night. He doesn't lead us to fend for ourselves. 5, sin takes us farther than we want to go, keeps us longer than we want to stay, and costs us more than we want to pay. And they paid it in the wilderness, didn't they? And then God will get us there by His own time when we are ready. So they ended up going back to, Mary has a hand up, so Chuck, why don't you take that microphone back to her? And so when people are ready to grow and ready to become what God wants, it may have been challenging, but God will get us there at the proper time. Mary?
I was just going to say I really appreciated the fact that the two spies who did have the courage to go forward with it were rewarded. They did not lose the opportunity to go in there along with the rest of the spies.
Yes. God doesn't say, oh, I know you did a good job, but, end the line. So courage really is rewarded. And how were they fed? I mean, they're in a wilderness. There's some vegetation there, scrub brush and such as that. And they were fed out. Here's manna and occasionally quail. God said, I'm going to take care of you, and it'll be miraculously. Exodus 16 and Numbers 11. And so think about looking toward the promised land and how God blesses us as well in the promise. All right. We're going to move into the realm of talking a little bit about Hammurabi because they're going to be having some issues in a little bit with judges and then with kings and with slavery. Well, Hammurabi's back in this time. He's really not interacting with them yet. But I thought everybody has heard about the Code of Hammurabi. And here in cuneiform on the slides above, you'll have an example of this. And people say, well, what happened was Moses copied Hammurabi. No. Moses, Hammurabi, and everybody else gets their laws from God, although mankind tinkers with them and changes them a bit. But I thought you'd be interested to see how different Hammurabi's code is from Moses' law in the Old Testament. Number one, if you accuse somebody of murder without proof, the penalty for you is, you guessed it, death. If you steal something from a palace or a temple, the consequence is death. If there's a fire going on and you loot the house or the store, you're burned to death. If you're caught during a robbery, the consequence is death. If you're a recipient of stolen property, the consequence is death. If a woman leaves her husband, she's cast into the river, which means consequence is death. And he said, well, there's some things that you don't get killed for everything under his code. And if a judge renders a fine wrongly, he shall pay 12 times and be disbarred. So, man, you do not want to mess up in the court of jurisprudence. An individual or a family can be sold for a debt and be set free in the 4th year. If a man wishes to separate from his wife who bore children, he shall return her dowry, give her part of a field, and she may marry who her heart wishes. A son who strikes his father, the son's hands, not one hand, both hands, cut off. How often do you suppose a son wanted to smack the parent? Well, I think I'll just hold my opinions to myself. And so his laws were really stark. Okay, now in comparison to the 10 Commandments, there was, of course, those first 10 commands: thou shalt have no other God before me, not have any graven image, not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, remember the Sabbath, keep it holy, not kill, commit adultery, steal, bear false witness, or covet. But of course, there are all kinds of laws: laws of sacrifice, ritual purity, laws of health, tithes, feasts, food laws, civil laws. And so people tried to count them up, and some said, well, there's over 1,000 laws in the Old Testament. I said, no, really, that law is a lot like this law, and that the sense of it is covered in this other law. And so some of them said there are 613 laws, 248 positive and 365 negative. Does that matter? No, it's just somebody trying to categorize them. But Moses, from God, had it both ways. All right. So we get everybody through the wilderness. We come into the land of Canaan, and Moses dies, who's going to be the next leader? And that is? There's going to be Joshua. And Joshua 1 through 6, Joshua is given leadership. And he conquers Jericho there at the eastern border of Palestine. Then he goes on to central Canaan, then southern Canaan. Then there's a northern alliance, and he gets after them. And then the eastern kingdoms, why, you've just knocked them silly. Except for the Philistines. And that gave them trouble for hundreds of years. Because if you don't clean house, there's always somebody creating problems. So Joshua passes, and that moves us now into the time of the Judges. And question number 8 in the workbook is, how would you characterize the period of the Judges? What would you say about that?
It's cyclical.
Okay, Chuck wants you to Mary so she can, Mariana, make her comment. Went too far, Chuck. 3 rows up, lady with her hand in the air.
There were cycles. They would be bad, and they would be oppressed, and they'd repent, and God would take them back, and they'd be good for a while, and then they would just repeat the cycle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Time after time. They just never learned their lesson.
Cycles of sin. In fact, in psychology and working with criminals, you'll have a similar kind of thing, and it's just crushing to a people or to a personality. So there was 300 years where you have the tribes are in there, but what's their organization? Well, we're all there. And they're described as a loosely knit group of tribes without any central government or leadership. So a problem comes up, and there's Othniel and Ehud and Shamgar and Deborah and Gideon and all the rest. You come on down, Eli and Samuel. But where did they come from? Well, they came from all over Palestine as God would raise them up, deal with a particular problem, solve that problem. People say, oh yeah, we're so glad, and back into their old ways. And so here's a way of just looking at that cycle of sin that Mariana mentioned. That start out spiritual, serving the Lord, oh man, we're all for it, we're going good. Good for you. And then they'd get into sin. They're doing evil in the sight of the Lord and worshiping the local deities and Baal and Ashtaroth and all of this. And so God will punish them, raise up Moabites or Canaanites or whoever it happens to be, the Philistines, and punish them. They're under that for a while. They say, oh man, it's terrible. So now they're going to pray about it. So supplication. Israel cries out to the Lord, and the Lord raises a judge. So here's the Savior. All right. Whether Ehud or Shamgar, Gideon, Samson, whoever you got, rise up. All right. Strikes down the enemy. Wow, we're free. We're saved from those enemies. And we're going to serve God for another few years until we go into that same crazy cycle. People, nations tend not to learn from history. Chuck?
Well, they were tribal then, so when the judges came from different parts, was when they went into, when they sinned or whatever, it wasn't necessarily all of the area, maybe, was it centralized in different areas, and then the judge was raised up in that area?
The Canaanites didn't necessarily conquer everybody, from Hebron up to Dan or something such as that. And so it would be kind of local. And so a couple tribes would say, well, we'll help you out. Or maybe they were asked to. And everybody else said, well, let me know when the locusts pass by. We're kind of busy right now. And so it was tribal. And this place would be oppressed for a while, and so forth. And so as you get past all of that, and then finally, here's Samuel's sons, and the people are irritated with Samuel's sons for their immorality. And they say to Samuel, give us give us a king who will go before us to war like the other nations. That we're tired of this craziness, and we want somebody better. And so Samuel tells them, do you want a king? God said, let them have a king. They want a king. You want a king? Man, you're going to be taxed. You're going to regret it, but you can have a king. So, Dennis, the first 3 kings over Israel are?
David, Solomon, and, oh man.
Uh-oh, he's having trouble, folks. Somebody help him out. The first king was? Saul. Second king is? David. Third king is? Solomon. All right, there you go.
I read it wrong when I was on the wrong question.
I understand, and you're on tape too, so we're going to remember that. And so, here was Saul. What kind of personality do you have, kind of? Oh, yeah, he started out pretty good, sort of warrior, but insecure, jealous, demon-possessed, 1 Samuel chapter 1 down through 31. And then there's David. His personality is?
Man after God's heart.
A man after God's own heart and always did what was right? Oh, no, not exactly. Courageous, was called the sweet psalmist of Israel. Spiritual, loyal, flawed, repentant, but suffered the consequences the rest of his life. And then finally Solomon. Tell me something about his personality. Wise. Very, very wise. So smart, he could be a great builder, built a temple, peace-loving, idolatrous, 700 wives, 300 concubines. How smart can that be? Well, it's political. I'll marry the daughter over here for this potentate, and we just won't have war anymore. And then she comes, I always wanted my one little idol. I won't mention anything. I'll just put it in the windowsill. No windowsill. I'll put it in the closet. Okay, in the closet. You know, Mom's coming, and I wonder if we get the idol out. He goes, oh, no. And then Henrietta says, well, wait a minute, she got her idol. I should have my idol. And so what happened to Solomon? He himself went into idolatry. Well, you got the United Kingdom. Then you have the divided kingdom between 930 and 722. And so, at this point in question 9, what was Israel's complaint about Solomon? Now, they go to the son, Rehoboam, and say, we got a problem. And the problem we have was initially with your dad. What was the problem that Israel had with Solomon? Taxes. Yeah, taxes. Our problem is, you got this great building program. I mean, you're building a temple for 7 years, and the palace for whatever it was, 20 years, and the roads and all this opulence, and it's wonderful, except we got to pay for it, and we'd like a break. Let me ask you, if there was a politician who could say, I'm just going to try to follow the laws, be honest, not create scandals, and you don't have to have any taxes for the next 50 years when we can balance the books, would you vote for him?
Yes.
Both hands go up, absolutely, because they didn't want to be crushed. So Rehoboam said, well, give me a couple days to think about it. He talks to the old guys, and the old counselor says, if you want to win the hearts of the people, what should you do? Yeah, boy, give them a break, cut taxes, let them have some breathing room. What did the young men say? They have a little different point of view. Oh, whip it on them, man. You want to seem like a whip? Why? They'll run over you. So he thinks he's going to be the tough guy. And he tells the representatives, he said, boy, my little finger is thicker than my father's thigh. He whipped you with whips, I'll whip you with scorpions. I ain't like that. Whip made out of scorpions and stinging you. And, boy, you're going to have it miserable because I'm that tough. And so what did northern Israel do? They said, away to your tents, O Israel. Man, if that's the way it is, we're done with you. So why did the kingdom divide? Rehoboam's stupidity. And really, in part, that was part of the plan of God. Because he's going to separate the idolaters for a while in 1 Kings 12, 6 through 16. So the northern king, Jeroboam, doesn't want them to reamalgamate with Judah. So he sets up 2 cities for calf worship, idol worship. For 29 points, what are the 2 cities? Dan and Bethel. Dan way in the north, and Bethel just above, I'll say, the Judean or Jerusalem line. And he said, here are your gods, O Israel. And I don't want you to have to travel all the way down to Jerusalem to offer sacrifice when it's right around the corner. Probably some of the stores you go to just because what? They're close, so you go there. And so that's what they did. And for the next 200 years, every one of Israel's 19 kings was bad. Now you get, in our country, you get some good presidents and a whole lot of not very good ones, and you can see the country goes in decline. But what if every president we have is the next worst, most awful thing, more so than the last one? What becomes the country? Just goes up in flames. And when was the northern country of Israel taken into Assyrian captivity? The date? 722 BC. And there again, sometimes people say, well, I think it was a little different. I think it's 721. I don't care. The one I'm most comfortable with is 722. If you like it, there it is. It'll be on the test. And so that leaves Judah alone. And so the Assyrians haul them off there and get them all spread out. And so when they transplanted the people of Israel, look what they did. They just didn't leave it barren. They want people that's not going to rebel but pay taxes. And so the Assyrians transplant Mesopotamians and people from Syria, Damascus and such as that, and other places into the land of Israel with a mixed Hebrew and pagan religion. One of the reasons why were Jews so incensed about Samaritans? Well, first of all, they're not Jews. They're pagans from all over. But they kind of follow some of the Jewish laws because they said, we came in the land and look what bad things happened to us. Maybe we should follow the God of this land, Yahweh, right? So we'll take some of his laws, some of ours, my high places, and all the rest. That's where the Samaritans came from. Jesus, the woman at the well, asked for a drink, and she says to him, why are you, a Jew, asking of me, a Samaritan woman, a drink of water? He said, if you knew who asked you, you'd ask a drink from me. Judah gradually follows the same path into idolatry with a mixture of 8 good and 12 bad kings. Well, you can tell the equation doesn't look favorable. They're not going bad as fast as Israel went, but they're going bad. And every once in a while, you got a great king that's just like, a starburst. Give me 2 great kings somewhere in the middle of Judah's timeline. One was Hezekiah. Another was Josiah. And so every once in a while, you got a great king, and wow! But that star fades, and the decline continues. And so Babylon took Judah into captivity in 3 ways. Willis will have a few different dates than and I looked at other authors. Other ones said, well, I don't agree with that one, I agree with this one. The ones that I like, see if you know, 3 ways, 3 initial ways into Babylonian captivity. The first one, and we're counting down, the first one was 606, 597, and 586. Willis and some others, well, maybe that's 585 or 5, and so they'll have different times in there. You can do anything you like. Those are the 3 I am currently most comfortable with, and those ways will be talked about in 2 Kings chapter 24 and 25. So now, northern Israel is hauled off. Southern Judah is hauled off in 606, 597, and 586. And Jeremiah and others would prophesy, you'll come out in 70 years. I look around here, where are you going to be 70 years from now? Let's see. About 145, 150 years old. Well, I won't be here to come back. But in this congregation, we got little babies. Some of those little babies would still be around. We have some teenagers. They might be around. And so then, now we've got all the way through Egypt and Judges and United Kings and Divided Kings, and they're into the exile. And what happens is, they're in Babylonian captivity, and then Iran conquers them, the Medo-Persians, in about 539. And it's interesting, and we're familiar with this, that the Persian king Cyrus reversed the Babylonian policy. He said, I'm going to treat you better than that. And he allowed the captives to maintain their national religion and go home if they wanted to. Well, now, all the early rebels, they're gone, and you're having a people that, the rulers are saying, we're going to be kinder to you. Well, you might like to go home and be willing to pay your taxes at least for a while. And they returned according to prophecy in Jeremiah 25, 12 and 13, after 7 years. So as they come back, various individuals come up to a position of leadership. And one is Zerubbabel. He leads some Jews back to rebuild the temple. What was his position for 71 points? Zerubbabel was nobody. I'm going to keep that 71 points. Mary?
Wasn't he the guy that said he wanted to, that was the guy that wanted to build the temple, he was supportive of it?
Now, Zerubbabel's position was governor. And he was sent back to get the temple started. Haggai 1:1. Ezra leads a group back to restore worship. What position was Ezra in? He was a priest of God. Ezra 7:11 and 12. Nehemiah comes back to rebuild the Jerusalem wall. While he was serving Cyrus, his position was cupbearer. You want the most important position, the guy that will drink the wine and eat the food to make sure it's not poison. You think, well, I'm not sure this, old king. Why don't you take a bite and let me know? No, your job is one of absolute trustworthiness and loyalty. And so, tremendous position. Everybody has a job. Everybody needs to serve. And I appreciate you, your commitment, your godliness, your willingness to be here tonight. And then Nebuchadnezzar has a vision. In Daniel chapter 2 and verse 31 through 35, and this is mentioned as part of this period that Mike Willis includes, and this part will be preparatory to the Intertestament Period. Nebuchadnezzar sees a vision that has this giant metal statue. And Daniel 2:36 and following, he says, the head of gold. And Nebuchadnezzar says, what's it mean? And Daniel says, you, Nebuchadnezzar, are that head of gold. So Nebuchadnezzar, your city, that represents this empire right now. And so I want to give you Nebuchadnezzar, and then everybody that reads the Bible and understanding that God knew what was going to happen. And then he sees this statue has a chest and arms of silver, Daniel 2:39. And Daniel says, here's what that means. Yeah, the next empire to come up would be the Medo-Persians, Daniel 5 and Daniel 6. And historically, then they overthrew the Babylonians, and we'll talk about that a little, next week. And then there's the belly and thighs of brass, Daniel 2. He said, that is? Greece. Yeah, there's Greece. There's Alexander the Great. And there's some really cool stuff about that and how some of all that worked out. And then there's the legs of iron and the feet of iron plus clay in Daniel 2:40. And that is? Roman. There's the Roman Empire. Now, interestingly, some of individuals today like to say, well, that really isn't the Roman Empire. That's the They want to bring it into modern times. See, when you get down to the toes, there's the European, union and all this and that. No, I just say, here's this idol. And when did Daniel say that God would establish his kingdom?
The days of this kingdom.
In the days of these kings, in the days of the Roman Empire, he's looking forward and he said, here's what is going to happen. So as we wrap up tonight, I'd say, congratulations. You survived lesson 1. This week, choose a friend to study with, a study buddy, that you can bounce questions off and hear what I think, and here's how this works. And then do your homework, and God willing, show up next week. We'll have some fun. I am so thankful to have you here. God bless.